The reason for the MBA and also working in this impact investing space is I really believe, and Jesus says it, to whom much is given, much is required.
Mm-hmm.
And so we serve a generous God, and He is our Father, and He is lavish.
Can't wait for you to meet my guest, Katherine Braynard, an incredible gal who works at Impact Foundation, headed off to get her MBA at Oxford. But for right now, she's so focused on her purpose, which is to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And she does that in the world of finance. She does that in the world of impact investing. And it's just a beautiful thread of generosity that she has interwoven and obviously allowed God to weave in her story. And I know you're going to be encouraged and inspired when you meet Katherine Braynard. So thanks for being here. Well, I'm joined today with Katherine Braynard here in the studio, and she shares her business acumen with Impact Foundation as her current employer as the Director of Innovation. She leads what is called the Table, which is considered an investing session where actually we meet 7 times, and provides additional educational opportunities for the donors and investors associated with Impact Foundation. And today is part 3 of a 4-part series. So if you haven't heard our prior 2 episodes with Dana Wichterman and Samantha Couch, I would totally encourage you to listen to those episodes. But today is going to be a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm a big fan of Katherine. So welcome, Katherine.
Thank you, Kim. I'm a big fan of Kim as well, so it's great to be on.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I know you haven't been at Impact Foundation for a super long time, but boy, the impact you have made in the amount of time that you've been there, I think has been tremendous. And one of the real roles that you have played has been taking this concept of the table that other individuals came up with, and then you rolled it out and you helped build into it and improved it. And it's really been a joy for myself to get to participate in it and be a member of the table. So why don't we start with that? Why don't you go ahead and, for the people who have missed the prior episodes, please define what impact investing is all about. And let's just jump right into what is the table offered by Impact Foundation.
Awesome. Well, so happy to chat about this topic because I really believe that as Christian women and generous girls, there is so much fun and excitement to be had in generosity. And a great way to do that is through impact investing. So impact investing, what we're looking for is to make an investment in a for-profit company or fund that has an impact in terms of financial return, but also social, environmental, and spiritual return. So this is often called a quadruple bottom line. Mm-hmm. So our bottom line is not just the bottom dollar, right, but we're also really looking for how do we have tangible impact in those other areas as well. And a lot of that is global in nature. So think of anything from one company that comes to mind is a yogurt producer in Rwanda that employs those who are part of the deaf community. And it has, and the language that they use on the factory floor is sign language. And so that's been one example of a really redemptive place of work.
Yes.
Another example that comes to mind is a virtual reality tech company based here in the States that has a lot of clients in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And in this company's case, they really focus on how do we make language learning more accessible to everyone, and then especially with an eye towards the refugee population. So those are a few examples of companies that have a for-profit model, but also have tangible returns in those other areas as well.
Excellent. And the unique part about Impact Foundation is, as I have explained on a prior episode, we came out of the National Christian Foundation, and the National Christian Foundation, one of our generous sponsors of this podcast, stays in the lane of granting to nonprofits, to 501c3s, to churches. So you put your money in your donor advised fund or your giving fund with NCF, and then you grant and you give away your charitable dollars. Well, some people put that money into their donor advised fund and they don't want to grant it all out, but they want to invest it. So that's where Impact Foundation comes into play. And that's where you could take your dollars and you could invest in these opportunities Katherine's talking about. And then they hold on to that money. Maybe it's in the form of a loan, and over 5 years, 7 years, that money, the investment finishes, and any interest, all of that money that you've invested, when this is finished and it's gone as according to plan, it comes back into your giving fund. And then people say, well, I gave it to this opportunity in Rwanda last time, and now I want to invest in this Christian movie that I'm really passionate about. So it gives you new options with your charitable dollars, which is really unique to find a donor advised fund that the IRS allows to do this really creative use of that capital. So it's a very fun space to be in. And Katherine and I have the privilege of just talking with people all over the world, the people who have the idea and they have their company, and then they bring us the person who's the donor investor who wants to invest in that, what we call portfolio company on our platform. So as a way of dipping your toe in the water, we had a lot of people that asked us, how does this work? What is this all about? I want to try it. And so that's the concept of the table. And that's what we'll have Katherine, you go ahead and explain how that works to be a part of the table, because we do have 2 cohorts that will be starting up this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about impact investing, it seems really amazing in theory, but these are private markets we're talking about. So they're less transparent. They're less liquid. There's a lot of different rules by the Securities and Exchange Commission that you have to abide under in order to make investments in these really early stage companies and funds. And so a lot of people might have the capital that legally allows them to engage in these type of investments, but the knowledge and the comfort level might feel a little bit more shaky. And so that's where the table comes in. So the table was actually created by a handful of women, a handful of generous girls who were out there saying, we believe that we're supposed to be generous, not only in the way we give, but by investing, we believe that we can actually have more scalable and sustainable solutions to come alongside the giving that we're already doing. So for instance, if you are really passionate about combating human trafficking, you might give to a group like IJM, International Justice Mission, and they do some amazing work in terms of getting people out of trafficking situations. But you also might make an investment in another group. For instance, there's one called Eagle Venture or Eagle Freedom Fund, and they invest in tech solutions to combating human trafficking. And that's a for-profit fund, but you could take your DAF, invest in that, and then any positive returns that may come back, you then could recycle it into another impact investment, or you could give it away to IJM in this example. So there's kind of that sort of feeling or idea behind it. So a handful of ladies came together and said, okay, we love this conceptually, but practically we want to roll up our sleeves in community. And so the table started a little over a year ago, so in March 2024, and it was all about how do we bring together a set of women who all chip into a pool, and then let's hear from different impact companies and funds. And then at the end of our 6-7 weeks together, let's actually invest that pool. So that's exactly what happened. And so over the past year, we've continued to grow and scale that work to offer it not only to women, but now we also have co-ed groups where women can join their husbands or their son or daughter and go on this journey together. So like Kim said, the table's 6 to 7 weeks. We got a bonus session in there, and it's all about hearing from real life companies and funds. And then at the end of our time together, actually going and voting on which companies or funds to make that investment in.
It's kind of like a giving circle. And one episode we had Lori Farquhar and Beth Papatic on the show who talk about Strike Force, this giving circle down in South Florida. Because there's more power when your money is associated with other people's money, and because it's bigger donation that you're able to give. And the other part that I found so endearing to the concept of the table was it wasn't like we were just looking through pitch decks, But instead, we had 3 companies individually pitch us, like you would on Shark Tank. Why should we invest in them? And then we had 2 funds pitch us. And I was a part of the women's cohort. And so we all took our money, invested it all together. And then for example, one of the founders, it's the middle of the night overseas where they are, and that individual's pitching us on why we should invest in what she's doing. And then we, as a team of women in the cohort, are analyzing the risks, the rewards. What do we need to be aware of? And could we lose this whole investment? Or wow, does this really have, real upside to it? And we want to invest in it. And then we all vote at the end and we decide this is where we want to allocate our capital. But I think I really want to encourage the listener, if you're intimidated by this phrase of impact investing and you don't know where to get started, you just feel like I've heard of it, but it sounds so complicated. Think of it like when you're in Spanish 101 and you know nothing and you go in and you learn, hola, ¿cómo estás? And you just learn a few phrases and all of a sudden you know enough to, order at Taco Bell in Southern California. That's the same as impact investing. It's a new language and we have a whole glossary of terms, and you learn the terms, you learn the language. We really encourage any question and we all learn together. And we're all just very blessed being in the West and in the country that we live in and the capital that we have. You have a whole spectrum of what people have to invest. Maybe someone has, many, many zeros after it. Maybe someone doesn't, but we all, together can do something. And I think this whole concept of impact investing continues to grow, and more people want to just, with their one life, their capital that God has entrusted with them, they want to do something. And last time, we talked with Samantha about solving the world's greatest problems and people coming together for a weekend, which is happening in San Jose here in Southern California this fall. There'll be another event in Austin, but that's a practical application of let's all gather together in person. How can we use our dollars? How can we do impact investing to really make a difference in the world? So I think, Katherine, you've done such a great job of clear communication in that group, encouraging everyone to participate, and honestly feeling like, wow, where those dollars go, it could really change the trajectory of that company. A lot like Shark Tank, where you realize that Shark Tank, when they chose them, that changed everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I feel like we need almost a nicer version of Shark Tank,
yes.
like what's it, like Dolphin Tank? But yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's just like that of what does it look like to have these companies share their hearts, share their the impact that they're making, as well as establishing a solid financial foundation for their company. So all of those things are important. But yes, I feel like so often Christian women in this space count themselves out way too early.
Yes,
I agree. And like you said, Kim, it's a foreign language. Finance is a foreign language. So do not feel bad or guilty or ashamed if you don't speak it, because at one point, and no one spoke it.
Exactly. But the terms are thrown around, and when you hear them and you don't know what they mean, you feel like, oh, that's just, I don't know that. And I majored in this in college. I didn't major in that, but no, it's learnable. It's definitely.
Yes. And learnable. It's for everyone.
Okay. So that's a great segue into, let's talk about a little bit about your upbringing. And then I know you're a grad of Princeton. Congratulations. And then we're very sad at Impact Foundation to lose you, but headed to Oxford with your MBA coming up just in a few weeks when this podcast will be live. So we will greatly miss you. But tell us, a little bit about your story, what led you to Princeton, what you decided to major in, and then maybe we can fill in the gaps of what you did in your career prior to Impact Foundation.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So I am a Midwest girl at heart. I have 3 siblings, and then my parents, and my family's all really close. And I grew up nominally Catholic, but didn't really know the love or heart of God. And so I'd go to mass and things like that. Here's some readings of scripture, but it never really penetrated my heart until, and this is where it kind of segues into generosity, where I was on a scholarship to Kanakuk Camp. So anyone who's in the Midwest or South, that might be a familiar name, but it's a Christian summer camp in southern Missouri. And they are so intentional about the way that they share the gospel with all of their young campers.
Lots of athletes, sports.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, lots of athletics. If you have kids, Kanakuk is a great place to send them. Full plug.
Yes.
But while I was there, someone shared the gospel with me, and it really felt like scales fell off of my eyes. And suddenly it was really seeing Jesus for the first time. And so I was about to turn 12 at that point, and my sister also got saved at Kanakuk. And so we went home and told my parents and my brothers, and my mom and my brothers. My dad wasn't really. He was a Easter and Christmas kind of Catholic per se. So the rest of us started going to like a non-denominational church down the road that really like preached from the Word, and it just felt like we were growing in our faith so much. As it turned out, our family's home was just a couple blocks away from the pastor of that church. And so this pastor, he was in his like 70s, and he would go on walks and he would stop by and chat with my dad. And my dad, again, he was not really feeling the whole church thing, but it was this beautiful instance of this father figure, because my dad also grew up in a single parent household. And so it was just this father figure pouring love into him. And sure enough, the Lord so worked. And so my dad started going to church. And then by Christmas Eve of that same year, my two brothers and my parents gave their lives to the Lord under the Christmas tree after that pastor stopped by on Christmas Eve. So that was such a turning point in my family. But it was also really significant because I mentioned, the whole scholarship side, because my dad had left his job several years before that to start a nonprofit museum, which really caused my family to be very, very financially insecure. And so my family of 6 was all on my mom's salary as a physical therapist. And it was just a lot of pressure, especially on her, on my dad as he's building this new venture. And the rest of us kids. And so we had to, our home, it was right around 2008. So you can imagine what happened with that. Yeah. So there was some fears of, potential foreclosure later down the line. And so they had to sell that at a pretty steep loss and downsize into another kind of fixer-upper, still in the same town.
Yes,
but
very challenging.
And my, and that really marked that time. So, but what God kept doing was, even though it felt like an identity crisis of living in a wealthier area of town and yet not having enough credit left on the credit card for gas. But that was so unknown to friends or other people around us because it felt so shameful. And, we were, especially growing up like that, it felt like the odd man out. So it was really, how do I kind of cover that up so that other friends don't realize that? But what it also did is when we got saved, it was like, wow, the Lord actually is so generous towards us. And we just started receiving such generosity, whether it was that Kanakuk scholarship that allowed my whole family to come to know the Lord. Later, that same church we started going to gave my brothers and I like full scholarships. I think we paid a couple $100 to go to that private Christian school, and our faith just flourished.
Wow, so neat.
And so, there's been so many threads of how even in a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear, God really provided and really kind of gave me a heart for generosity as a joy rather than as a guilt trip.
Right. No, that's such a beautiful story. And thank you for sharing that, and share your mission statement because it does dovetail so nicely into your story.
Yeah. So my mission statement, and this is just something that I feel like the Lord's just given, like spoken over me a lot, and just is to be the hands and feet of Jesus to the vulnerable and the oppressed, and to bring beauty to dark places.
And you've done a lot of international travel. I know you're going to Thailand coming up here shortly.
Yes, yes.
And what are some of the other like missions trips you've done abroad?
Yeah, yeah. So I did one last year in Brazil with my church as well. A lot of it though too is what does it look like to be on mission anywhere? So even my husband works for an airline, so we were up and I'm based in Seattle now, and so we were up in Alaska this past weekend, and it's like even on like a kind of just a fun trip. What we're always doing is saying, okay, Lord, who do you see? What do you want us to say? How do you want us to pray and intercede on this trip? So whether that's sharing the gospel with a shuttle driver, or whether that's praying for someone that we meet, or whether that's just enjoying God's creation and saying, wow, Lord, you're so worthy of our worship and praise and honor. It's really like, how do we live missionally anywhere that we are? And so that has made kind of the whole, anywhere, whether it's the streets of Seattle or,
wherever anybody is.
Exactly.
No, so beautiful. And I know you're planning on weaving this mission statement into your work of your MBA also at Oxford.
Yeah.
Do you have to choose a specialty of your MBA ahead of time?
A little bit. Yeah. There's some specific labs that you can do, like a finance lab or an impact lab and things like that. But overall, the reason for the MBA and also working in this impact investing space is I really believe, and Jesus says it, of to whom much is given, much is required. And so we serve a generous God, and he is our Father, and he is lavish. And there's so much joy being his child. So it's not even, oh shoot, I have to do this, in exchange. Right. It's just an overflow of his generosity. And so with the MBA, a lot of that is, I really believe that we as Christians need to be investing in emerging and frontier markets. So developing economies, our dollars should be going there. And especially as a church, we are asleep at the wheel. So my charge to you all listening to this is wake up. Right. It's so beautiful how the Bible says, awake, O sleeper. I'm just like, Christ's light will shine on you. Like the Lord is here, but we just need to wake up. And there's so much excitement and beauty to be had in being generous. And especially here in the States, Kim and I, you and I were just chatting about this, of we might think that we don't have much, but we have so much. So much. And so, and especially, I'd really encourage you too, of anyone listening to this who hasn't spent much time in developing nations, you need to go. You need to be able to see what true poverty looks like, and to have your heart break for others, and just pray to the Lord, God, give me a heart like you have, because that will wake us all up and just help us step into the invitation that God's given to be generous to all.
And I know it can be overwhelming. You can go to a really poor place and be on a bus or be in a van driving several hours to where you're going to serve. And I have been on those trips where it just feels like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Like it reminds me of the book, The Land of the Thousand Splendid Suns, or The Kite Runner. When you read those books, you read them from a Western perspective, and you think, well, this is how it could be solved, and this is how she could escape. And sometimes there's no escaping, and it can be very depressing when you take your mind out of like the love of God and how God sees it. And even though you're one life, and when I've been in those situations, I feel like, I don't know how my one little life can make a difference, or my one little dollar can make a difference here. But I know I'm supposed to be on this trip. I'm called to be here, and I'm going to leave the results to God. He's in charge of this whole country, loves this country way more than I do. And I'm just going to let my one little life on this trip for a week be what God's asked me to do, and not versus coming back with just that heaviness of all the things that you see that can be really hard. It's like, it's the story of the starfish, when you save the one starfish and you think, okay, but look at all the other ones, but you are saving that one. And yeah. And so I want to challenge all the listeners to believe that like your one life could be way more powerful than you think it is. And again, your $1 could be also how God multiplies that way more powerful than you ever had any idea. And sometimes even when we're in those situations, and I've heard it called like the wet shoulder, the ministry of the wet shoulder, where someone's literally crying on your shoulder and you don't feel like you have a solution. But that presence is, you are the hands and feet of Jesus in that place. And maybe that is the turning point that individual needed. And doing this too, like being involved in emerging markets, not only with our dollars, but with our time, our talents. Maybe you're a healthcare professional and you can offer those services over there, but it's whatever God is calling you to do, and to say yes, and to take the step, and to all of us to encourage one another to not be afraid, even though it can be scary, and see what God has, and then look back and go, okay, wow, at the beginning of 2025, I didn't know what this meant, and now I've learned, and now I'm another step up on that staircase of that continuum of learning. And it's just fun to grow as women. And we talk frequently on the show about the great wealth transfer, and for whatever reason, God is entrusting roughly 80 trillion, if not more, in the next 10 years to women. And husbands, women outlive men statistically. So if you're a widow listening, know that you're here for a reason. If you have resources to invest, know that that's not by accident, but God perhaps has you as a gospel patron and someone who's meant to not go, but to fund things. And maybe you're really gifted at making money, then keep doing it. And as Katherine said, then be generous with what God has entrusted you with. So I think that's so great, Katherine. I love your mission statement. I love that you're going to do this 12-month MBA, and I'm excited to see like where you'll go, from there. And yeah, just if you'll stay in kind of the nonprofit world, or I don't know if you have any thoughts now of what you're thinking that you want to share.
Yeah, no, I'm just, I feel like the story that God's already written with my life is just one that I couldn't make up, but it's always so much better than the one that I could have crafted myself. And I feel like there's such a beautiful opportunity, like what you were saying, of like we live in a unique time, especially with the great wealth transfer. It's like this is the time for women to stand up and to lay their lives down for the Lord. And it reminds me too of Jesus's ministry, and throughout the book of Acts, the primary people funding Jesus's ministry were women. So just to be clear, how beautiful to lay what they had down at the feet of Jesus. Oh my gosh, what an incredible opportunity.
Businesswomen,
yep. Proverbs 31, she's out there making her vineyards, bringing ships from afar. We have Lydia, the trader of purple cloths, big funder in the early church. We had a number of women around Jesus. Just the generosity of women has been throughout the Bible. And it's something that didn't stop after John wrote Revelation.
Right.
So it's for us today.
Yes. And you're just calling to mind, different individuals. That there's a gal that created the Lydia Network, similar to, your reference to Lydia, and activating women across the country. And then I think of the three women, Dana Wichterman, and then Suzanne Daniel and Michelle Dudley behind the table, and what they've done with their individual lives. So I know all of you listening are some form of a Lydia, and God's got something for you that he wants you to step into. So we want this to be the time to encourage you it's not an accident you're listening on your AirPods and hearing Catherine's message, but take the next step and see what it is that he has for you.
Yeah. And it even reminds me of, you can't mess up. You can't go wrong.
Right.
It makes me think of the story of Mary of Bethany when she breaks her jar of perfume at Jesus's feet and anoints him for burial. And when she does that, when she breaks that expensive jar of perfume, there's all the grumbling, there's all the accusation of, oh, she just squandered it. That money could have been used for the poor. But when you pour out your life, when you pour out the resources God's entrusted you with at his feet, it is always a good investment. And you are storing for yourselves treasures in heaven. So you are a great investor, even if your investment went sideways, even if, you mess something up, like God cares about the heart so deeply. And that's what God sees.
I always think of like you take your car to the mechanic and you think positively it's going to be $200. Then you go, oh no, it's going to be an $800 bill. And then you think, okay, Lord, the $800 that you gave me was not mine. I'm stewarding your money. And obviously you think that the mechanic hates it more than I do.
Less. Yeah,
right.
So true.
Right. And we hold on to things loosely, as Dana had talked about. We are stewards, not owners. So,
yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to say in this field of impact investing, women in business, emerging markets?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a loaded question. Yeah, absolutely. So I would say just practically, impact investing can be a great way, again, to accompany your giving. Listen to some of Kim's other podcasts about donor advised funds. Best kept secret out there in terms of being really smart with your giving. It always blows my mind that you can take appreciated assets like stocks, Apple stock you bought 20 years ago, or let's say you or your husband have a small business and you're getting ready to sell. Those sort of things can be donated to a donor advised fund before you ever sell it.
That's right.
And it avoids capital gains tax. So there's smart ways out there like that you can maximize your giving in non-cash ways. So that's just one thing to throw out there. When it comes to impact investing, a great place to start is Faith Driven Investor. So that's awesome that Kim had Samantha on the podcast to share about their foundation groups. That can be a great place to learn what's kind of the thinking around these concepts of stewardship or investing that's driven by your faith, and be in those conversations in community. That really is the perfect place to start. If you say, okay, my heart has been transformed, I want to do this, but I'm still struggling to figure out how, there's some great resources out there. One, I'd really encourage, there's in April and then also in October, there's an event called the Lion's Den. DFW is in April. Birmingham, Alabama is in October. And it's basically an in-person Christian Shark Tank. So that is a great place. There's hundreds and hundreds of Christian investors and entrepreneurs that go. And so that's a great in-person place to see this in action, to be exposed to some of the types of companies that we're talking about, and also to meet other people in this ecosystem. Because there's also amazing groups out there that help these companies grow and scale. A big one is named Praxis here in the States. There's one in East Africa called Synapis. There's one in South Africa called Triga, a bunch like that. But there is this whole world that exists. And then, like we talked about before, if you're kind of ready for that next step, we run the table a couple times a year. So the next one is in the first week of September, for instance, in 2025. But we do it every fall and every winter, where we actually kind of pool some money together and learn how to do it through learning by doing. So those are some things I'd leave with as action steps.
No, I love that. I love how you summarized all of the different opportunities. And then I remember hearing from Dana that you could actually attend the Lion's Den in Birmingham virtually once a month. There's an opportunity to do that too. So many ways to get involved. And I think you've done a fabulous job of weaving your own personal story into practical application. So thank you for being such a generous girl and your generosity of being on the show. And I always want to make sure we allow time at the end for your favorite Bible verse, book you're reading, and a bargain.
Oh, great questions. Yeah, so my favorite Bible verse, and this has been really since the time I came to know the Lord, so I'm amazed that it's stuck, is 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his outward appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. For the Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart."
Yeah.
So that's favorite Bible verse. A book that I'm reading or would recommend. So one of my all-time favorite Christian books, I got to say, A Voice in the Wind by Francine Rivers. There's got to be some folks that are listening to this that are like, amen, sister. It is so good. So if you just need kind of like a cozy Christian fiction, romance, historical fiction novel that's also really spiritually inspiring, I would totally read A Voice in the Wind. I have considered naming my, I don't have children, but I've considered naming my future daughter Hadassah after the girl in that story, because she just so embodies like what it looks like to follow the Lord in the midst of difficult and persecution.
Yes.
One that's a fun one that I read this year is Endurance by Alfred Lansing. And this is an adventure book. Okay, so this is about Sir Ernest Shackleton, who is one of the heroes of Antarctic exploration.
Right.
And in 1914, he set off on this expedition to Antarctica to be the first one to cross the continent. But before he could even really like step foot on Antarctica and make his way across, his ship, the Endurance, got stuck in pack ice, which is incredibly powerful ice that essentially just kind of like created this wedge for the ship to be immobile. And ultimately the ship sinks, and his 28 men are left on the pack ice with no way to communicate to the outside world that they are there. And they will just die unless they can find a way off of Antarctica with their ship stuck and now, in the bottom of the ocean. And it is one of the most inspiring stories of just like courage and grit. And so, not to spoil it too much, because the book, like, you have to read it, because every step along the way, your jaw is dropping. Like, how are they still making it?
Yes.
And ultimately, him and a few men have to try to sail to the closest island, which is 800 miles away, on a lifeboat.
Wow.
So in Antarctica, like in insane conditions, it's unbelievable. So I that story just really will blow your mind. So highly recommend. Okay. There's also a movie if you prefer to just, skip ahead, because it's decently long.
Oh, no, that's a wonderful recommendation. I have not read that book, so I'm adding that to my list. Thank you for sharing.
Really good. Yes. And my bargain is related. So I've got to say, 2 bargains related to audiobooks. One is Libby. It's like the app that you can get if you have a library membership at your local library. You just put in your card, and it's free audiobooks. So that can be really fun. Sometimes there's a long wait for them, though. So I like to pair it with Spotify Premium. This is not a paid ad, but Spotify Premium comes with 15 hours of audiobook listening a month.
I did not know that. That is good to know.
So if you have a Spotify Premium account, make sure you are following
That's
you.
Really good. Excellent. I love your bargain tip. Oh, so great, Katherine. Well, I wish you the very best in your journey to Oxford. You'll be leaving in just a few weeks, and so exciting. Thanks for all you've done at Impact Foundation, how you had such an influence on all the members of the table cohort that you have arranged. And it's going to be fun to follow your own journey with Shelby, your husband, and just see what God has in store for you. So I love your generosity and really appreciate you being the guest on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kim. So appreciate you too.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.